So let's get to our first caller. Our call-in line is, as always, sponsored by Iowa Smokehouse. So let's go to our first caller of the day. It's Ryan. Ryan, good to see you, sir.
Hi, Corey. How are you?
I'm doing good. What you got?
Can you hear me okay?
Sir? What's that?
Can you hear me okay?
I got you loud and clear.
Thanks, man. So I was flipping out something terrible in the second quarter because once again, we go for a 2-point conversion where we historically are not any good at them. And we could have gone up 13 in the second quarter. Granted, at that time, we looked like we were clicking, but the Iowa State game is always going to be weird, and it's always going to be close, and you should absolutely expect that they're going to come out a different team in the second half. And so I just thought it was absolutely irresponsible and asinine to go for a 2-point conversion. I said that before it was even attempted. Had we gotten it, I still would have said I hated the call. And that's just my opinion. Those kind of things bite you. The 2-point conversion is more for when you got to maximize your comeback, usually later in the game. I am not a fan of leaving points on the table early on.
Well, first of all, let me address the 2-point conversion. So I agree with much of what you just said, and I want to make something very clear. There are times when you're playing with the lead that it is smart to go for 2. My problem with going for 2 at that place is the obvious. There was 20 minutes of game time left.
Yep.
When they went for 2. They went for 2 with 5 minutes left in the third quarter of 19-7.
That's right. It was third quarter.
Of all the, and by the way, make this very clear for anybody that doesn't know, like most of us here know football, but if you don't know football and you're just tuning in because you're a big Hawkeye fan or maybe even a Cyclone fan, the head coach is responsible for making that decision. That does not fall on anybody else. It's not LeVar Woods because he's involved with point after tries. It's not Tim Lester because the offense, it's Kirk Ferentz. Now, Tim Lester, I'm sure, is probably the guy who signaled the call in. And the call is what the call is. I mean, like you mentioned, Iowa's not historically been good at 2-point conversions under Kirk. I think they've got an opportunity to flip that script under Tim Lester. But a 2-point conversion, regardless of who you are, is risky. There's risk involved with 2-point conversions. So you're absolutely right. 19-7. And for people that don't realize the impact there, if you kick the extra point, you're up 20-7. The reason why that's so stupid to go for 2 at that point in the game is because there's 20 minutes of game time. You're up a touchdown and 2 field goals. You're up 3 possessions. And oh, by the way, that's exactly what ended up happening. It's exactly what ended up happening. Iowa State, touchdown, field goal, win. That's exactly what happened. And hindsight's 20/20, but I'm with you, and I can show people, and I guess I can't prove that I wrote this down before. I typed it up as soon as it happened. I said questionable, and this is a question I had for Coach Patterson regardless of result. Questionable decision going for 2 up 19-7. 5 minutes left in the third quarter. And it's not just about the 2-point conversion, and some of this is going to fall on Tim Lester, but 2 things that really burn the crap out of me right now, Ryan. It's the 2-point conversion right now, and this is going to sound ludicrous to some people, and some people are going to think it's stupid that I'm saying this. They should have kicked a field goal on the final play of the game. 65 yards. I know people think that's insane. Drew Stevens makes those in practice all the time. He's making 60-plus kicks in practice all the time. So you tell me right now, Ryan, what has a better chance of working? A Hail Mary from the 49 or a 64, 65-yard field goal? I would venture to say the field goal, partially because you have a big-legged kicker and you have a quarterback who must not be able to throw 49 yards because it didn't even make it close to the end zone.
Well, that's just it. They had to know that Cade's arm was probably not strong enough to make it to the end zone. He was a good 10 yards short. And then, absolutely, if he misses the field goal, you missed the field goal, but you went down trying. It gave you your best chance to win. I agree there. I'll give you a third that just is burning my butt right now, and that is I am so damn sick and tired of embarrassingly bad quarterback play. We cannot develop a quarterback under Kirk. Maybe you can argue Ricky Stanzi,
Cade
but
McNamara was not. I don't think anybody's going to argue for a second that Cade McNamara was developed under Iowa. Like,
no, but
maturation process.
But you know what? Is there a crime? Is there a crime about, hey, I went from where I was to a little bit better the next year to a little bit better the following year? In my opinion, if you look at Nate Stanley, even he was better as a sophomore than his senior years, or at least very equal. I wouldn't say he got better. But he was usually a pretty good quarterback unless he played against some really stout defenses. Then he kind of folded. But he was generally pretty good. But we had these situations where, it's 2nd and 7 or whatever it was. It's a passing situation. You got to get downfield. It's a passing situation. Problem is, we have no confidence in our quarterback to make a clutch throw. So we're running Caleb up the gut. Everybody in the stadium, and especially Iowa State, knew it was going to Caleb, and that Iowa was more or less hoping to get a first down, but playing to punt. And when you put the ball in the other team's hands, you're asking for a loss. And that's exactly what happened today. They led 6 seconds, the last 6 seconds of the entire game.
Let me just say this, Ryan, and this is one thing that has to get brought up, because the bottom line is, we're all going to be focused, and the narrative coming out of this game, some of it, I don't know what the narrative is going to be like tomorrow and the next day, but right now the narrative is, why did they go for 2? And again, so this wouldn't have even been talked about by some. It would have been talked about on this show, I can guarantee you that. But it wouldn't have been talked about by a lot of people had they won. Like if that 54-yard field goal by that ISU kicker had missed wide left, we wouldn't be talking about it. We'd be like, they kind of caught a break on that one.
I actually would have, because it burned me that bad.
But a lot of people wouldn't have. They would.
Yeah, I agree.
Take another close Cyhawk win. But here's the other thing that needs to get brought up, because the biggest thing that happened in this game. The biggest thing that happened in this game did not occur in the second half. It occurred in the first. When you have multiple trips inside the 5, first down inside the 5 multiple times, and you can't punch it in, red zone offense failed Iowa today.
Absolutely.
It failed Iowa. 100%. You can't walk away. It should have been 21-0 at halftime. And that's not like, it's easy to say that, like, well, you could have finished a couple of field goal drives and touchdowns. That would have been 21-0. These were drives where they were inside the 5, first down inside the 5.
Well,
both of them with field goals. Should have been 21-0 at halftime, and the game should have been virtually over.
And one thing that you haven't even mentioned, but I think you're in a way alluding to it, the biggest criminality of it all is, who's the best? Okay, right now, obviously, it's Caleb, but preseason, who's the best offensive player on Iowa?
One would think Luke Lachey.
Luke Lachey. And guess what? One target, no catches? I'm sorry, but when you can't find a way to utilize Luke Lachey, I'm sorry, you deserve to lose. And as much as that ticks me off, my God, we're talking about an NFL prospect here, and you target him once on a really bad pass that was more or less uncatchable, and you don't run schemes to make sure you get the ball to Luke Lachey. He's one of your playmakers. Now, I know they made a big long pass to Caleb, which was underthrown, Caleb Brown. The little bit I actually saw him in the game, I was going to ask if he even got in, and then I caught him late. But you got a scheme for these guys. Looks like we might have something with Vanderzee. He got one catch with 5 minutes to go in the game. We had absolutely horrific utilization of our offense, and I'm saying that more from a targeting standpoint, but obviously Cade was just beyond awful, and I am so tired of quarterback performance never being a reason to sit. I think when you're having an awful game, and if you're second string quarterback who's played in the Big Ten before, if you think he might fare a little bit better, then you owe it to everyone to make that move. Doesn't mean you permanently bench Cade, but it does mean that maybe you're done for the day when you're this bad.
They were never in this game going to turn to Brendan Sullivan. They
I
just never.
know.
You knew that. I mean, we all knew they were
I
not.
know. And that's what's frustrating.
Ryan, I made the comment going into the fourth quarter. I said, Cade's playing poorly right now, but we know, can you imagine what it would take for Kirk to go to a different guy in
An
a close
ACL,
game?
an ACL injury or death.
With the
I mean,
exception
CJ Beathard in that bowl game when we were losing by 30 was borderline dead. I mean, they were just beating the holy hell out of him. Ed Cunningham, the commentator, was more or less making child abuse accusations against Kirk for not pulling him and going with true freshman Nate Stanley, who is healthy. And Kirk won't pull quarterbacks. And obviously, we have 26 years of more or less seeing this, that he is extremely reluctant to ever pull a quarterback. He's made some changes. He made the Christensen change one year, and he in the offseason went with Beathard over Rudock. But for the most part, he just doesn't do it.
Well, they were losing a bunch of games when they made the switch from Christensen to Stanzi, and that's the difference.
Yep.
That's what as long as they're up or even within striking distance against a good team or even a crap team, they're not making a change. I mean, I remember 2000, was it 13 or 14? I was in the stadium for Iowa Ball State. And I don't know that Rudock had a historically bad game, but they nearly lost that game.
Mm-hmm.
They pulled it out, but they nearly lost. Even then, there was no doubt. They had CJ Beathard and I believe Cody Sokol. It depends on which year that was, if it was 13 or 14. They had a good quarterback room. Kirk values his style and the score. We all understand, the end game is winning and having the higher number on the board. But I just think at times Kirk really lacks foresight, and that's as PG as I can put it. However, with that being said, you know what has enabled that, Ryan? He gets away with it so much.
Yeah.
And credit to him for winning games ugly. They get away with it so much. Look at how many games they've won with Spencer Petras and Deacon Hill. I mean, look at how many games they won. Utah Tech got blown out by 50 today to UNLV with Deacon Hill at quarterback. And I'm not making fun of the guy. I'm just simply stating these are the guys who have been starting at Iowa. They went 10-2. They went 10-2 with Deacon. I mean, one of those losses was with Cade McNamara, the Penn State game. So Deacon Hill lost literally 3 games if you count the Big Ten championship game, and of course ended up losing the bowl game. This is we can go down a rabbit hole for days. I do have to move on to another caller.
So let's start off with the positives. Caleb Johnson, I'm going to steal your thunder a little bit. You said he did really well in the fourth quarter, and I think what you're alluding to is how he kept his feet moving where he was stopped at the line of scrimmage, and he actually kept his feet moving and got multiple yards.
Correct. His ability to create that's been the big thing. His inability to create yards after contact. We all know he's fast, and when he has a really big hole, he's gone. We saw that several times today. Give the offensive line credit for how well they blocked early. However, typically in a second half where Iowa State starts keying in on some of these play calls and shooting gaps and getting home, you're going to see a lot of negative plays for a big running back that you would think is a horse. Today, he turned a lot of those plays into really positive plays, enough to where they were 1 first down away from winning the game.
It's, that's about the only positive I can think of out of the game. It's just, I remember coming on here, when was it, Thursday, and being fairly confident in this game because Iowa State was down linebackers. They just had a lot of injuries across both defense and offense where I thought Iowa would be able to take advantage. And we saw that with Caleb Johnson. I mean, how many 20-plus yard runs did he get? And then, you were talking with Ryan about the 2-point conversion. The problem I had with it was you were down inside the 5 multiple times and failed to convert. So what in the absolute heck do you think you can do it on a 2-point conversion?
It's obvious there was someone, and I don't know who the analytics guy is behind the scenes, because I know Coach Patterson is not, he provides Kirk and the staff with analytics throughout the offseason, and then each week leading into Big Ten plays. Has nothing to do with non-conference play, by the way. But he's not the analytics guy on staff. They have an analytics guy. So I don't know if it's him. If is that the guy who's telling you, yeah, it's the right time to go for it. I can't imagine the numbers say go for 2 when you're up 12, like 2/3 of the way through the third quarter. I think that's ludicrous. I can't imagine that that's what the analytics say. That's what the numbers say.
And, obviously it was a tale of two halves, very similar to how it was last game. Obviously, you just kind of flipped it a little bit, where Iowa was dominant in the first half, and just kind of fell asleep at the wheel at the second half, where, Iowa State came out and got that quick score, and it was just like, ooh, okay. But Iowa had a great response and got a touchdown, and for the most part, kind of held Iowa State, but obviously just there's some times there where it felt like nearing the fourth quarter and even a little bit in the third, Iowa got very predictable. Like I was even in my living room calling, this is going to be a run. Okay. Oh, it's third down. It's going to be a pass. And they did that for the last 3 series they had. If you don't count the Hail Mary throw. And it actually seemed like after Cade threw that interception when he was trying to hit Luke Lachey, which was a bad pass. Like first off, the pass was bad. Second off,
horrible pass, horrible decision.
Yeah, First off, the pass was terrible. Second off, the guy Luke Lachey was double covered. So why even trying to throw it there?
If the first guy hadn't been imagine Cade didn't see the first guy. Well, even if that guy didn't exist, there was another guy. I mean, he was running him right into a defender, and it could have been picked by him or at least blown up. And that last thing that Iowa needs is, Luke Lachey to get blindsided like he did last year.
Yeah, it's just, and I remember mentioning this too on Thursday was like, hey, I'd like to see Cade run with the ball. And there was times where he kind of thought about it. He like, oh, I'm going to go. But there was nothing there. And maybe we need to scheme something for him. I know the injury history. I'm not oblivious to that. But man, you got to make the defense think about it. That's the thing. It's just like, and credit to Iowa State. They came out in that second half and they made their adjustments. And it's just, I'm saying Iowa didn't make them, but it seemed like Iowa State made the better adjustments. Their offense started clicking, and Iowa's defense, I don't know. That last play where they kicked the field goal, that one long pass they let up, and I was like, man, that's not a typical. Man, maybe we missed Cooper DeJean that much, but
first of all, it was Sebastian Castro on the coverage. Who was that? Was that Jaden Higgins or was that Noel?
No, I believe.
Okay.
Well,
I go back and watch.
Either way, they're both great wide receivers.
My first reaction is there's no way Sebastian Castro should have been in that matchup. Like Sebastian Castro may be a pretty good slot corner and an excellent, hybrid linebacker DB type of guy that works in that cash system. But he is not a guy who should be out in space against Iowa State's best receiver, regardless who that receiver is year in and year out, because they got good ones every year. And what did I say in the preview? All week, we've talked about the only way Iowa State wins this game is if they do it through the year. And that's exactly what they did in the second half. And Xavier Wampa got pulled. I'm assuming he was healthy, that it was just due to performance. I don't think he ever saw the field again after giving up that long touchdown. But that's what's scary about playing this Iowa State team. And you're not converting on opportunities inside the 5 time and time and time again. You're coming away with 3. It takes one. It takes one big play down the field and one busted coverage to account for more than 2 of those field goal possessions. Like you work so hard to get down inside the 5 2 different times. How many plays do you think they ran? I'd love to go back and look at those plays. And I'll even add on like the first drive of the game when Iowa got 3 first downs. It was a great drive. And they punt down the field, get the ball right back, and score they scored a touchdown that time, right? But in a situation like that, I'd even count that preceding possession where they're playing the field position game to get the ball in an even more advantageous spot. How many plays did it take for Iowa to score 3 points on 2 different occasions? A lot. And what did Iowa State do? Well, they got the talent and, unfortunately, busted coverage, and they get a 75-yard touchdown pass on one throw. And that shouldn't catch anybody by surprise. Go back and watch what Iowa State did a week ago against North Dakota. 2 plays on the first drive of the game and a touchdown in 38 seconds.
I can't remember if I mentioned on this show or maybe at someone I mentioned to at work. I says Iowa will give up one play. Like there's going to be one busted coverage where Iowa State would take advantage of it, but that's it. But even so, that one busted play tends to, it seems like it hurts the most. And a good question maybe for Don is, I talk about how predictable Iowa's offense got. So, I mean, it seemed like it happened after that interception that Kate threw. At, who's more to blame on the predictability? Is it Kirk saying, I'm playing not to lose? Or is it Tim saying, okay, this is the plays we're going to call? I mean, obviously it's a little bit of both, obviously, but it's like is it the head coach saying, no, we're not running that, we're running this?